Here we go now, on with the show. Everyone's here now, we're all in the know. The place to be now, be here or be square. A little late now, but we are all here. It's after dark with Scott Clark. Eternal rhythm flow. Eternal rhythm flow. The place to be now, be here or be square. A little late now, but we are all here. It's after dark with Scott Clark. It's after dark with Scott Clark. With Scott Clark. With Scott Clark. Eternal rhythm flow. Eternal rhythm flow. Flow. Eternal rhythm flow.
Hey guys, welcome to tonight. It is Scott Clark. I'm your host. This is the Eternal Rhythm Flow channel, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the rapture thing. If you guys remember, last year at this time, rapture was in full swing, and it was a completely wild time. There was this guy from Africa who claimed to be a prophet of God, and a whole bunch of people latched on to the things that he was saying as though he was actually a prophet of God, which he was not. And I'm telling you, man, millions of video views were going on. They even called it like a hashtag Rapture Talk on TikTok, and it was on YouTube, and there were people doing live streams, and everybody was literally well, not everybody, but there were a bunch of people that were lifting up this guy as being really an actual prophet. I mean, it was like this cult thing. It was weird. Do you guys remember that? Drop a comment if you remember that. I think his name was Joseph. Was that his name? Anyway, I don't follow any of those people because they're in a totally different belief system. I believe the Bible literally, like in its actual context. So like I can't fall into all that stuff. Yeah, and so like I don't know what's going on, but I know that like now, usually going up through September is like high rapture watch time. They always do this, and every single year they mess with people's heads. And if you're an empath like me, it'll kind of bother you because I actually care about people. I actually don't want people to be deceived and living in a delusion. And there's plenty of people when we have sort of this indignation, like when we realize that something bad is happening, then we get pissed off, right? So that happens with me. And does anybody would like to know, or anybody like to tell me in the chat, like what's going on with these people? Because I don't know. I really don't know. I'm not paying any attention whatsoever. But I know that I haven't. Usually this stuff comes across my desk. Like, Scott, have you heard what's going on? And like, there's this guy, this prophet from Africa. And I mean, I heard about that like quick. I heard about that really quick, that there was this prophet in Africa, and then he was doing interviews and live streams, and you couldn't miss this stuff. And sure enough, it just fell off a cliff. And never to be seen from again. Well, he popped up a little bit, I think, to try to, make excuses, like kind of like begging for attention back. But the narcissistic supply was over, And yeah, so I don't know what they're gonna do this year, but it's usually connected to September 23rd. And there's a reason for that. Right around there is the autumnal equinox, when the sun passes the equator and we go into the fall. And then from there until like around the 21st of December is the fall. And then December 21st to 22nd in there is this when winter begins. So you have this 3-month season of the fall, and that's usually where the biggest rapture hype is of the year. Anyway, I'm here to help anyone who wants to know how that actually works, and the rapture, tribulation, all that. I'm going to be going over some of that tonight, and I'll show you exactly how it works, because I know exactly how it works. I actually know, I have a very good idea when it's all going to happen, and it's not going to happen the way that those people say it. I actually built a 7,000-year timeline based on the genealogies and the timing of everything written in the Bible. If you've been following my channel, you've seen it. It's a 7,000-year timeline. And the Bible actually is not a book of mystery, as people say. Now, since the book of Revelation was written and the New Testament, all of the things that you really want to know has been revealed. It's just that Christianity takes this stuff totally out of context, and they tell you things like no one knows the day and the hour and all that kind of nonsense. And that was actually told by Jesus, said that. No man knows the day and the hour, not the angels of heaven, not the Son himself, but only the Father. But that was reversed in the very first verse of the book of Revelation. It says that God gave his Son. It says the revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave to Jesus Christ, and he sent he sent his angel to give it to John. So it reverses the process. In like Mark 13, it says, no man knows, no angel knows, the Son doesn't know, only the Father knows. And then that's reversed. It goes back down the other direction of the hierarchy of the four: God, the Son of God, angel, and man. It reverses that in Revelation 1:1. So the entire point of the book of Revelation is to reverse that no one knows thing. And people don't know that. So, yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that tonight, because that's what's coming. We're going to go into September. And here's the other thing is that, in Revelation 12, it talks about, basically it talks about the constellation Virgo, which is a virgin. It says that there's a woman clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet. And there's a scenario of that woman giving birth to a child who has an iron rod and who will rule and reign. And connecting it with other verses, he's going to reign on earth for 1,000 years, and that's Jesus. And he was born of a virgin. He was born of Mary. And the only constellation that has a woman that can be clothed with the sun is Virgo. And she's the virgin. And she's up there lying on her back with her legs wide open. So back in 2010, around Christmas, I was studying some sort of Christian type things like the Star of Bethlehem. And that led me to go to Revelation 12, and I was reading this, and I went to my astronomy program to actually try to find that, to see if that was a real thing. And I knew how to poke around in it to put the sun in Virgo and put the moon under her feet. And so I went year to year to year to year to year to year, about 7 years. I started around 2010 and then went all the way got to 2017. And sure enough, I aligned everything, and I found what I then called the Revelation 12 sign. Took some screenshots, posted some things. Within a week or so, somebody who had seen my posts made a video about it, and I didn't take it super seriously because I didn't really know. I just thought it was amazing. Like, wow, it looks like I was the first one to see it. I was the first one to sort of interpret it as this, and I put it on the internet, and it went nuts. And I think even to this day, it means something. And I think I know what it means. I don't think I knew what it meant back then, but I think I know what it means now, because it's not alone. It's connected to other things, which I've been talking about with actually tomorrow night I'm gonna with my members, channel members. Tomorrow night we're gonna do members only Mondays, and I'm gonna go over the next sign that's coming, and because the Revelation 12 sign was not alone. God does things in 2 or 3 witnesses, and I didn't know that when I discovered it in the beginning, but now I do. And so now it's time to move on, and there's some things coming very shortly. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow night. You can jump in, become a channel member. It's only $5. There's 4 different tiers, but you can hang out with us tomorrow if you want for only $5, which is 16 cents a day. Cancel at any time. So that sign, that was like, I remember back then, the rapture back then, like in 2010, I've been following all this Christian Bible prophecy stuff since I was a teenager, so I was very much aware of it. Grew up in dispensationalism, was always looking for a preacher of rapture, and it was always by, the elders, by the guys who wrote the books and had the TV shows like Prophecy in the News and all that kind of stuff. They always pushed this, and Jack Van Impe, John Ankerberg, Hal Lindsey, all these guys that I used to read and watch. They would always say that the rapture could happen at any moment. It could just happen whenever. It's a signless event. It could just happen whenever. Of course, I bought that hook, line, and sinker. It's always think, okay, I'm just going to put my faith in this whenever thing where I'm just going to go fly up to heaven. And I believed that for decades. And never was it really in mainstream dispensationalism, never was it really attached to these things called feast days. I remember when I first learned about feast days around 2009 and 10 in there. And because the church that I grew up in, they don't practice feast days. I grew up in a Protestant church. I was actually the drummer. I started playing drums in the high school band when I was like 16 years old. I played drums in church for like 30 years. And so I was always like on the inside of like the people who ran the church, right? But never did anybody talk about or study feast days, really. I mean, everybody knew about Passover, but we did Easter. And I never really understood those things until eventually around that time, 2010, I started getting more into understanding what was going on in the Bible, what happened at the Exodus, and what the God of Israel told them to do, to have these appointments, these holidays, which is where we get our word holiday, is holy day, and that there's 7 of them, and it's likened to a 7-candlestick menorah. There's Passover, unleavened bread, first fruits, Pentecost, Feast of Trumpets, Feast of Atonement, Feast of Tabernacles. Now, I couldn't rattle those off 10 years ago, but eventually I started learning quite a bit about them. I made a lot of videos on this channel about that. Because they're appointments, and there's a strategy to the events that take place and what the God of Israel is going to do. And eventually Jesus is going to come back on those feast days again. So when I posted the screenshots, the first screenshots ever I put on the internet of the Revelation 12 sign, and then I started posting. I was in this sort of like end times forum, and it was just sort of this website run by some people, and the people who own the website, they believed in the whenever rapture, like rapture now kind of a thing, anytime. It could happen at any moment. And I started studying this, and I was talking about this discovery that I had. And I said, I think that this, because Revelation 12:5, in the verse, it says that the child was caught up unto God into his throne. Now, I didn't know what that meant. I pretty much thought it was Jesus. I changed my opinion on that around 2016, and now I've changed it back. Because I got confused by a dispensationalist guy from a Dallas Theological Seminary who had it all wrong, but I, bought into it. He said that child is the church in Revelation 12:5, and it's not. It's actually Christ. But in that verse, it says the child was caught up. Those two words in the Greek, behind the English, is the word harpazo in the Greek. And that's the same word that Paul used in 1 Thessalonians 4:17, when he talked about the dead shall rise first, then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up in the clouds. And all the guys that I had studied under since I was young said that caught up, that was rapture. That's the rapture verse right there. And so this Greek word harpazo means rapture, and that's, obviously connected to us. And so I immediately connected that, incorrectly, but I connected that as being, wow, I think Revelation 12:5 is a rapture verse. We're getting raptured when this happens. And I'd found the date. Right? Because that's when the alignment happens. Now, I never claimed on the internet that the rapture had to happen on that date. But as soon as I was making videos on this very channel about that, boy, I'm telling you, people went crazy about the rapture coming in September 23rd, 2017. And ever since then, because I made a lot of videos, and eventually a lot of other people started getting on board this feast day thing, whereas I remember going all the way back to 2010, Christians weren't all about the feast days. But now people seem to really kind of get it. And I remember Perry Stone around that time made a video about the Jewish wedding and all these things, and he started talking about feast days. And Mark Biltz discovered these 4 blood moons in 2014 and 2015. Those were on feast days. And eventually, feast days just got to be really important, and they still are. They're very important. But I just recall how, like, back then it was like the rapture was just whenever all the time. It was always whenever, and people still hold to that. But then once I made, I don't mean to like point at myself, but my experience was that once I put the screenshots and started making videos about September 23rd, 2017 on the internet, then all of a sudden that was the Feast of Trumpets, because it's related to Leviticus 23 and the moon being in a new moon. And I realized, okay, that's actually Jesus's birthday, not Christmas. I remember it was around that time I convinced myself that Jesus was actually born on the Feast of Trumpets in the fall, right around the autumnal equinox, and this whole Christmas thing is all wrong. Which, that was a little cognitive dissonance. And there's a lot of people that still believe that Jesus was born in December at Christmas. I mean, I think probably the majority of people still believe that, which that's not the case. He was literally born around the autumnal equinox of September 22, 23. Either way, or some people say September 11th. It doesn't actually matter. It doesn't actually connect directly to our Gregorian calendar, where we would say the name September. But it does have to do with the autumnal. It has to do with the sun and the moon. It has to do with the. It's not technically September, but it does have to do with the first month of the year, which is September, which is the autumnal equinox, and then the first month would be at the new moon, when there's a conjunction when the moon passes the sun. And that, I believe, is when Jesus was born. And I believe Revelation 12 tells us that. That's his birthday. Okay. So now, it seems like, I say all that to say this, is that the rapture hype is always a really big deal around September 23rd now. And also, it could be because it's not really about September 23rd. It's more about the months and the moon. It could be, some people say that September 11th was Jesus's birthday, 2,000 years ago. Could have been, because it's not about September. It's about where the sun and the moon were in Virgo. That's what it's actually about. So people believe that September 11th was actually a knock on Jesus's birthday. It was sort of a satanic birthday gift of destruction and death. Could have been. This year, September 11th is, I believe, September 11th is actually the new moon, when the moon is passing the sun. So technically, September 11th could be, if there was a temple in Jerusalem, which there isn't, and that is key. So there literally has not been any actual feast days since 70 AD, when the temple was destroyed. Even though those times of years are always part of the yearly cycle, there aren't any actual feast days. There cannot be. It's actually an impossibility, because that's the hub where feast days, the Israelites, even if they lived outside of Jerusalem, they would have to travel 3 times a year to go to Jerusalem. And now that that's all gone, that system's demolished, it's gone, there are no feast days. And there haven't been any feast days since 70 AD. In our lifetime, there haven't been technically any actual feast days, although those times of years do happen. And so a lot of people think when September rolls around, the rapture hype can pop up. That's my main point. And so, but I haven't seen a prophet so far this year. Has anybody seen a prophet this year? I haven't seen any prophets this year. But the point is that I don't believe it if it happens. If anybody's pushing rapture hype this year, don't believe it. They're wrong every single year. A lot of them push this stuff every single month. It gets views, it gets clicks, it gets big numbers on videos, and it makes these people a lot of money. This is how they're paying. This is how they're living. This is their lifestyle. Make rapture videos. Some people just sit in their car, talk about rapture on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and they make thousands of dollars, you guys. And all it is false hope. I don't respect that. I don't respect that at all. I don't respect that at all. And I would highly recommend that people stop giving these people your energy and your time and your clicks, because they're literally making money and living a great lifestyle by being disingenuous. They don't know the Bible. They don't know the context of the Bible. They're telling people to believe in something that's actually not even theirs, nor is it time yet. And I don't know. Maybe you don't care. I do. There's nothing I can do about it, but maybe say something. And I'm not calling anybody out directly, but they're all charlatans. They all are. So, yeah. Now, I also wanted to talk a little bit about this September, October, November. We're going into the election time period, and I believe that things are going to ramp up. I think we're going to have a red October, meaning a red wave, and this is going to actually connect to what I'm talking about. The next thing that happens on the prophetic timeline is not a resurrection of the dead. And most people forget that the rapture is not just like, oh, a bunch of people going to heaven. It's literally the majority, the main part of that event is a resurrection of dead people coming back to life. But I think that the rapture hypers, they don't really think about that. Like, because they can't even imagine that. All they want to do is tell people that they're going to go fly up to heaven and all their problems disappear. No, it's really about a resurrection of the dead. And then Paul says, we which are, and the we, who's Paul talking to? But he obviously puts himself in the group, because that's what we means. But he wasn't talking to people in 2026. That's clear. He was talking, as he says in the context, 1 Thessalonians 4:13, in that context, he says, now brethren, who's his brethren? And he puts himself in the group of we. Well, that's none other than Israelites. He's talking to Israelites. He's talking to his actual family. They all have the same fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That doesn't include me. I know that the Thessalonians were Israelites. Paul wasn't writing to me. Most of these rapture hypers, they won't actually take a closer look at the Bible and the context of it, and they won't tell you that Paul wasn't talking to you, which he wasn't talking to you. The Gentiles he was talking to were the uncircumcised of Abraham's seed through Isaac and Jacob. There were a bunch of Israelites that didn't keep the law and weren't circumcised, and they were called Gentiles, heathens, pagans of the family, which is why that's part of the narrative. There was a problem in the family. The law split the family into different groups. Those who kept it got circumcised, and those who didn't, uncircumcised. It's called the uncircumcision and the circumcision. Paul went to the uncircumcision of the family so that he could gather them under faith of Jesus Christ instead of the law. But that's a whole other subject. But the thing is that the next thing on the timeline is not the rapture. It's not a resurrection of the dead. The resurrection is the last thing that happens. There is one final week that is, meaning there's going to be this 7-year time frame that happens next. After the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, which was there was a war. Josephus wrote, a Jewish historian, he wrote that from 66 to 73 was a war. That's about 7 years right there. And 66 to 67 to 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73. So that's like a secret week that's inside Daniel 9:26 that's not mentioned. But it was a war, and that's when God just put an axe to his whole system. And Jesus said that he would come back after he was offended, put on a cross, that he would return in 2 days. And Peter said, and the Psalms say, that one day with the Lord is 1,000 years. So if you can determine when Jesus left, the Hebrew prophecies say that Jesus is going to return in 2,000 years. And that's not dispensationalism. That's literally Hosea 6:2. And 2 Peter 3:8. And Psalm 90 verse 4. So when you put all those things together, you understand that, yes, there is this 2,000-year-old gap, 2,000-year gap. And then the final week happens, and then Jesus comes back. And then the resurrection happens. This is the Bible's 7,000-year timeline. It's this epic timeline. And most people are not taught this in Sunday school. They're not taught it from the pulpit. But we live on this earth, we live in a 7,000-year timeline, And at the very end, God is going to destroy the current heaven and earth and the current humanity, us, and he's going to make all things new after this point. I was not taught about this in my life of going to church all my life, but it's definitely in the Bible. I've been, talking about this, making videos about this, live streams on this for a long, long time. And I started building this chart about last year. It's been about a year now. And what I did was I started with all the genealogies from Adam. And I wanted to get through to understand the timing of all the things that happened with Israel and then where Jesus Christ would come. Well, Jesus Christ came here at the end of the fourth day. A day with the Lord is 1,000 years. And that he would come back after 2 days, which is where we are. And this is why the world's crazy right now. It's because you are here. Did you see that arrow right there? You are here. This is where we live. And, if you believed all the nonsense in the school system that you came from monkeys and primordial soup and you live on a ball that's like flying and spinning in space and everything has come from a big bang and blah, blah, blah. That's not what the Bible says. The Bible says that we live in a calendar system and that everything has precision to it and that God created everything for a reason. And that's why the Bible has a massive calendar in it. But if you believe that everything, nothing exploded and that we're spinning in space and we come from lizards and monkeys, then you'll think that everything's random and nothing has a plan. That's absolutely false. There is an absolute plan to it, and it's right here on the screen. So these are some of the rules of the Bible. If you're new here, hit that like button and subscribe. 2 Peter 3:8 says that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years. So God, when he looks down from his throne, he says heaven is his throne, the earth is his footstool. When he looks down at the earth, he sees 1,000 of our years as just being one day to him. 1,000 years as one day. And then the reason for 7,000 years, for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and he rested the seventh day. Everything finishes with a 7. 7 is a complete number for God. For in 1,000 years, for 1,000 years in thy sight are but as yesterday when it's past. That's what Peter here was pointing to. Peter wasn't making anything up. He wasn't making something new here, like a New Testament new thing. No. He was pointing to the Psalm. For 1,000 years in thy sight, says the psalmist, they are but as yesterday when it's past, and a watch in the night. And then Hebrews says, for he spoke in a certain place of the seventh day on this wise, and God did rest the seventh day from all of his works. There remaineth therefore a rest for the people of God. And so what that means in the big picture is that earth is going to be here for 7,000 years, or for 6,000 years, and then a big change is going to happen because over here is that rest. Over here is the seventh day. And it's Millennium Day 7. It's called, because a day with the Lord is 1,000 years, you might read in the Bible this phrase, the day of the Lord. Well, that's this, from 6,001 to 7,000. That's the day of the Lord. And it's called, and because Christ is the Lord, it's called the day of Christ. That's a phrase Paul uses. The seventh day, that's in Hebrews. The third day is in Hosea. It talks about the third day. And that's because it's the seventh day from Adam, but it's the third day from Christ when he left. It's also called the last day. Jesus said that there is a resurrection at the last day. And then, of course, we just read that God rests on the seventh day. And the interesting thing is that we live right here. And this is why the world is crazy. Because there's a big change. The spiritual entities that are in heaven are moving. There's about to be a war in heaven. Lucifer and a third of the angels in heaven are about to be cast out and then thrown down into the lake of fire. And that's only just a short time away. And of course, I've calculated the whole thing. And tomorrow, I'll be zooming right into here on the members only live stream. Sign up right now. Hit the join button. It's only $5, and then you can cancel after that. But I guarantee you, this is what you want to know. This is what everybody wants to know. Everybody wants to know this information that I have. And right here, there's one last week that's coming. It's the 70th week, which I was talking about. And then the kingdom comes. And that's all right in here. And we live in the 600th decade. And we live in the 60th century. And this is where we are. Matter of fact, this right here starts at, I talked earlier about 9/11. 9/11 happened right here. And interestingly enough, it would be 33 years to Christ if the seventh day, or the kingdom, the final millennium, if it happens right here, starting in 2034, or the year 6001. So, and the final week would begin right here. The entire timeline actually began, besides 9/11, that's part of it, but right in the beginning of this was this sign that I found, September 23rd, 2017. There was a sign in the heavens, and this is related to other signs that are coming, and we'll go over that, members only. And but Jesus Christ, he came over here. If I zip back a couple thousand years, it's a big, big chart. I got millenniums and centuries and decades and weeks and years on here. Jesus came right here. And Hosea said that after he left, he would come back in 2 days. So obviously, if the 70th week is in our time, in our lifetime, and it's literally about to begin, then, of course, there was a 69th week, and after the 69th week, Jesus was cut off on the cross, it says in Daniel 9:26, and then a big gap would happen. And our whole life, we've been living in the gap. We're still in the gap right now, but eventually that gap's going to end, and the final 7 years are going to begin. It doesn't begin with a rapture, though. It begins with a peace covenant. It begins with a peace covenant. So, let me actually show you that. Where should I start? Well, the way that it began is this. The Israelites, they broke covenant with their God. He told them to let the land rest every 7th year. God does everything in sevens. He told them that they could harvest their land for 6 years, but then on the 7th year, they would have to let the land rest. It's the same concept as before. He created all things. He worked for six days, and he rested on the 7th day. It's the same concept as this. There's 6 days, or 6,000 years, that mankind is mortal, and then there's going to be a resurrection right before the 7th day, in which mankind, well, he's going to start with the Israelites that are faithful to him, they're going to be immortal. It's the immortal age. Okay, we don't live with immortals on the earth right now, but eventually, literally, in just over 7 years, immortals are going to be on the earth. So there's a 6 and then there's a 1, the final 7. Well, right dead smack center of the 4th day here, right in the middle of the 4th day, right here, at the end of 3,500 years, this is the dead center of our human experience, is right here on the timeline. And Israel was captive in Babylon. And that's important because it's a big marker. And so for 70 years, the Israelites did not let their land rest. They just kept harvesting and selling and buying. And during those Sabbath years that they were supposed to be letting the land rest, well, God punished them, and he had the Babylonians come and destroy their city and take them all captive, so that they would have to be off of the land, so that the land would then eventually have its rest. So he had to literally take the Israelites captive, bring them to a different land, so that the promised land could actually rest, and the minerals of the soil and the earth could come back due to the rain and however that works. So their punishment begins here. I've calculated everything with all the years and the genealogies and the numbers, and that began in the year 3447 from Adam. And then after 70 years, they would be released, and that began another timeline until Christ. There's a 7 and a 62. So it started right here. It said, Daniel writes this in Daniel 9, in the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood by books the number of the years whereof the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolations of Jerusalem. So Jerusalem was desolate for 70 years because Israel was captive in Babylon. And this is what Jeremiah wrote. These nations, meaning the 12 nations of Israel, the 12 tribes of Israel, nations is another word for them, underneath the umbrella of Abraham's seed, these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. After 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, their God says, I will visit you. And of course, for that to happen, he needed them to rebuild the temple because it was destroyed over here. So that's the first thing he does, is he tells them they're going to be released from Babylon, and the first thing they need to do is go back to Jerusalem and rebuild the city and, of course, the temple. Once they have the sanctuary and the temple up, then this can happen. God says, I will visit you. So then he could come and he could visit them. But they had to first rebuild the city, the sanctuary, refurbish the walls, and then make it so the temple was ready for their God to come visit them, and the glory could be held within. So this is what Daniel was told. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem, meaning basically their release from Babylon, from that commandment unto Messiah the Prince, meaning unto Jesus Christ coming, shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The 62 is Old English for 62. So there's a 7 and a 62. And then it says, and after the 62 weeks, meaning after the 62, shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. He didn't die for his sins. He died for the sins of the Israelites who kept breaking all the family laws. So there is, a lot of people misunderstand the Daniel 9 prophecy. So I'm just going over it quickly. There's 3 actually. There's a 7, there's a 62, that obviously together makes 69, and then in Daniel 9:27 there's that one final week. And what I'm sharing with you guys on this channel, should you choose to continue to like, share, subscribe, and continue to tune in, I can tell you when that 70th week is going to begin and how it all works, because you're living in that time. It's about to happen. So there's this rebuilding. 7 weeks. 7 times 7 is 49 years, and that's what they had. And so they would again start counting those Shemitahs, meaning sevens. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and they finished building the city. Matter of fact, right here, when Jesus was talking to some Jews, they said 40 and 6 years was this temple in building. So they give us this information that it was actually 46 years, which is just shy of the 49 of 7 times 7. And so they actually finished it right in the middle of the 7th week, which is interesting because things happen in the middle of these weeks, I've noticed. So that's when the temple was built. And actually, the week of the war from 66 to 73 that Josephus gave in the history of what happened to Jerusalem, it was 66 that the war began, and then 70 the temple was burnt on fire and destroyed, and then for the next 3.5 years, every stone was removed off the Temple Mount. So again, even all the way over there in 70 AD, it was right in the middle of the week is when something deliberate happened with the temple. So you have this 7 right here. The Israelites rebuilt, and they were released over here. Right in here was where Daniel got that prophecy, somewhere in there. And then they start counting Jubilees and Shemitah cycles again. And so you have year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Shemitah. It's always this thing with the 7. And the 7 is a rest. This is the micro. And of course, this here is the macro. That's just how the God of Israel has done it. So if we zoom right back into the center of the timeline, we've got the Israelites have completed the temple, and that took them 46 years, but they had 49, so they had a little time to, I guess, relax. But then they would start counting a 62. And this is where I think that they kind of forgot what they were doing. They forgot about the prophecy, because once Jesus showed up, this is literally after altogether 483 years, the Israelites that lived at this time over here, had pretty much forgotten about the prophecy. I guess they kind of forgot that this was the timeline that told them in advance exactly when the Messiah that they were looking for in their prophets, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, would which is the reason that they call themselves Jews, is because they, even though they were in possibly all 12 tribes, and one of the tribes was Judah, which the Messiah would come through, but they called themselves Jews if they had faith in this prophecy. Kind of like a Christian looks forward to Christ, a Jew looked forward to the King of the Jews, which was Christ. Now, here, this is where Jesus was born, and there were some wise men from the east, from where Daniel was from, the school of Daniel. They came to visit him when he was born because they figured this out, which is what this timeline is about. This timeline is exactly about that, is about figuring out this entire situation, this entire timeline. But Jesus was born, and there were some wise men of who came from, they were Israelites who knew the prophecies of Daniel, and they came to visit baby Jesus. But once he came here, which would be at the end of that final 69, they should have known that this was the promised one. And they didn't. They killed him. But then again, that's exactly what the prophecy said in Daniel 9:26a. It said after 69 weeks that the Messiah would be cut off, but not for himself. So when they yelled crucify and rejected him and denied that he was the one that was sent to them, which it says right here, after 62 weeks, Messiah shall be cut off, but not for himself. They were actually fulfilling Bible prophecy, killing the one sent to them, because it had to happen that way, because he had to be resurrected from the dead and he had to defeat death. So that's the end of that prophecy, the 69. And so when you read the narrative of the Daniel 9 prophecy, you realize that right in Daniel, then what happens actually, and this is Daniel 9:26a, Jesus is cut off in Daniel 9:26a, and then there's a colon here, and then if I read the second part of the verse, that's when the 40 years later, which is this right here, 40 years later, the temple was destroyed. So the timeline began with the temple being rebuilt, and then the timeline begins with the, or part of the timeline here begins or ends with the temple being destroyed again. And that was after 40 years from Christ. In 70, the end of it was 74. It was done away with in 74 AD. But the second part of that verse is this. It says, after the Messiah is cut off, then it moves ahead 40 years, and it says, and the people of the prince that shall come shall destroy the city and the sanctuary. Well, who did that? Well, the Romans did that. So it's saying that the people of the prince that shall come, it's saying that somebody's coming who's a Gentile. Some people try to make this Christ. That's obviously not. Christ was killed in the previous part of the verse, and then this prince right here is going to be someone else that comes who's obviously a Gentile, because his people destroyed the city and the sanctuary in 70 AD. And the end thereof shall be with a flood of men coming upon Jerusalem. And unto the end of the war, desolations are determined. And so that's exactly what happened here. The Gentiles came to destroy the temple from 66. This is what Josephus wrote here. My point is we're going to get to the 70th week, because this is what happened in the past. But there's prophecies of things happening, and there's a timeline which literally runs to 2026, friends. It literally runs to 2026. You're going to see some things start to happen, and it's not a preacher of rapture, I'm sorry to tell you. The Jewish historian Josephus, he wrote in his book, I put some notes here on the page here. These are, if you care to look up the references of his book. He wrote that the start of the war when the Romans came was 66, and the destruction of the temple, when, if you read it, it's when they started burning the temple. They were throwing, fire at it, and eventually started to take and burn, and then it never stopped burning. And then the end of the war, which is called the fall of Masada, when even the Israelites committed suicide so that they wouldn't be taken captive. Pretty bad stuff. Was 73. So you have this, 66 to 67, if you count it that way, each one of these is a year. And so what's interesting about Daniel 9:26, even though it doesn't call it a week, it's a week. It's like this is a hidden week inside of Daniel 9:26b. Really interesting. And so there's a 69th week, and then there's this hidden week that the temple was destroyed. But then there's one more final week. And what Jesus said through Hosea, remember it's the word of God, so really it is God speaking. He said this. If I zoom all the way out, grab my cursor here. Jesus left right here. He ascended to the Father right here. And then if we go up here and we follow this timetable, this is the after 2 days prophecy, is that Jesus said basically through Hosea, well, he said that the child was caught up to God. I mentioned Revelation 12:5 a little bit. Her child, the woman gave birth to the child. That's Mary, but it's also the Israelites were the people that gave birth to the Son of God. Her child was caught up to God and to his throne. Okay, that also relates to Acts 1, where Jesus, he died, he was buried, he rose again, he stayed with his disciples for 40 days, and then he was caught up and he ascended to heaven. And he's been there ever since, seated at the right hand of the Father. And he says through Hosea 5, he says, I will go and return to my place until they acknowledge their offense. Who's the they? Well, it's the Israelites, because they killed him and he was innocent and he was their king, the king of the Jews. And they should have known everything that we're talking about here. The entire timeline has been written. So they had no excuse. He says, I will return to my place until they acknowledge their offense and seek my face. And in their affliction, they will seek me early. Now he's talking about what's called the tribulation period, which is in the future. The Israelites are going to start seeking his face and call on him during a time of affliction. And then he tells you when this is going to happen. He says, after 2 days, Hosea now takes the microphone. After 2 days, he will revive us. Us, of course, as Israelites, not everyone watching this podcast today. It's just the Israelites. This is a prophecy about this family. After 2 days, he will revive us, and in the third day, he will raise us up, and we shall live in his sight. Well, what's that? That's the seventh day. That's 1,000 years when the Israelites are going to be raised from the dead, revived, raised up, and they will live with him in the third day from when he left. And then Peter mentions this, and he says, but beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years. So what's this after 2 days? Well, it's after 2,000 years. And then some people have gotten on my case about that and said, oh, well, you just believe in dispensationalism. No. Yeah, I believe the Bible. I can't be responsible what some people have done with the Bible and attached it to certain, belief systems and whatnot. I just go by this. I know what this means. 1,000 years is a day. And after 2 days means after 2,000 years. And then there's another 1,000 years after that because it's called the third day. After 2 and then in the third. So that's 1, 2, and 3. And then, like I said earlier, Peter was just reiterating the Psalm, 1,000 years in thy sight are but as yesterday when it's past. And then that revival that he talked about right here, he will revive us and raise us up, the Israelites. This is where the resurrection is. And the rapture, blessed and holy is he that hath part in the first resurrection. There it is. The first. The first happens after 2 days. And the 70th week is included in that. So it's not before. The first resurrection is right before the final day. Not 7 years prior. Blessed and holy is he that has part in the first resurrection. On such the second death has no power. But they shall be priests of God and of Christ, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. There's the third day. Reign with him 1,000 years, raised up as kings and priests. Priests of God. So all of these, this is a verse chain. And Jesus Christ, actually, he was 33 and a half years old when he died and when he was resurrected and when he ascended to heaven. So technically, if we count AD from Anno Domini, means from his birthday, he was 33 and a half years old. So he was in his 34th year. So it was actually AD 34. AD 34 plus 2000 is 2034. That's not complicated, friends. Not complicated. And so that brings us to this right here. That brings us to this. And this is where you live. And so this is 2026 right now. And when the red turns to yellow, that's 2034. So what we're going to do now, we're getting at about an hour. What I'm going to do is we're going to switch it over to members only. I'm going to hang out with the members. All you got to do is hit the join button, and I'll finish up. We're going to talk about the 70th week, and it's going to be absolutely amazing. This is really simple to do. There's faith, hope, love, and charity. And faith and hope, 16 cents a day or 33 cents a day. Really simple. So it's just, it's not a lot. You guys can, if you're interested in this stuff, it helps me out. You're obviously doing this kind of thing. We need some support. You can just choose whichever one you like there. Faith, hope, love, or charity. And Melinda, welcome. Welcome to bronze. Welcome to faith. Yeah, it's faith, hope, love, and charity. Or as far as metals are concerned, it's bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. So thank you. So we're going to switch over to Daniel. Good to see you. 2033 can't come fast enough. Yeah. 2033 can't come fast enough. It really is. Zach, I see you. CCAK, I see you. Kathleen, I see you. Linny, I see you. Great to see you guys here. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say thank you. And we're going to switch over to members only. Hit the join button, and you can meet us over there. We're going to talk a little bit about the 70th week. And hopefully the Rapture hype guys won't go crazy this year, because it just hurts people. I mean, literally, it's like I don't personally appreciate people jacking with people's emotions all the time. Because you see it. You see it in the comments. You see it in the videos. You see people get all excited. People have sold all their belongings thinking that, this prophet, this African guy last year, he ruined some people's lives. Yeah, and some testimonies were uploaded online. And it never happens, because you saw what I just did. What I just did is I showed you how things work. I showed you Bible verses. I explained the Bible verses. And those of you who know me and you've been here on this channel, you see that I could literally do Bible studies for hours, cross-referencing a Bible on the screen, such as like this. I just put the Bible on the screen like this, and I just talk for hours. Okay? And I have up here, I was just searching the blood of the prophets. But so you'll notice that with these rapture hypers, they don't do Bible studies in context. They really don't. A lot of them just talk about their feelings and their dreams. And they're wrong every time. Why is that? Because they're not applying themselves to the actual Bible. Like this. And also, prophets are not Africans. Prophets, talking about the biblical prophecy, prophets are always Israelites. Middle Eastern Israelites. They're not black people. They're not Africans. Never. They're not white people like me. I'm not a prophet. I'm just a guy reading the Bible. I can put together some graphics and some charts, but I'm not going to tell you that I'm a prophet. I'm going to tell you that anything that I say, it's due to some type of crunching numbers, or so-and-so begat so-and-so begat so-and-so, and the years and that kind of thing. But what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to tell you, thus saith the Lord, unless I'm reading it. But you'll notice that these prophets or these rapture hypers, they don't do that. And be very careful of somebody who just sits in their car every day getting people hyped up on rapture. It never happens, and they just string you along. They're gaslighters, and literally I think there's a mental disorder involved with that. People with mental disorders like narcissistic personality disorder, they don't run around with like a chainsaw or an axe with blood dripping on it. That's not what they do. They're smooth. They're like smooth car salesmen. You like them. They smile. They seem nice. They're believable. That's how they get you. So I would just encourage, if you see that kind of activity, just, don't follow it. Don't follow it. Because those people are bad news. All right, I'm going to hang out with the members. It's got 1 minute for you to join, and then we're going to continue talking about the timeline, and we're going to go into the 70th week, and we're just going to talk about 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, and 34. Those are the exciting years, and that's what's coming right now. We're literally heading into the 70th week, not the rapture, but a peace agreement that Donald Trump has been working on since he came back into office, and that's called the covenant with many in Daniel 9:27. The Abraham Accords. It's coming very soon. Watch it for this fall, September, October, November.